A relationship with the right referral partner could be a game changer for any B2B company. So what if you could reverse engineer these relationships at a moment's notice? Start a podcast, invite potential referral partners to be guests on your show, and grow your referral network faster than ever. Learn more at sweetfishmedia.com.
You're listening to the B2B Growth Show, a podcast dedicated to helping B2B executives achieve explosive growth. Whether you're looking for techniques and strategies or tools and resources, you've come to the right place. I'm James Carberry.
And I'm Jonathan Green.
Let's get into the show. Welcome back to the B2B Growth Show. We are here today with Dave Brock. He is the CEO at Partners in Excellence. He's also the author of Sales Manager Survival Guide. Dave, how are you doing today, man?
Great, James. Thanks for inviting me. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. This is the first interview I've done in 2018. And I am really excited that you are the guy that I'm talking to this morning, Dave. We had a great conversation a week or two ago, and I'm really pumped to share some of the wisdom that you shared with me on the call, in a recorded format like this. So I appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Hopefully this foreshadows great things for 2018.
Yes, I hope so too. So Dave, you're the CEO of Partners in Excellence. You also wrote a book called Sales Manager Survival Guide. Tell our listeners, just to give them a little bit of context before we dive into what we're going to be talking about today, which is around prospecting. But explain to our listeners what you and your team are doing at Partners in Excellence.
Yeah, we're a boutique consulting company. We consult primarily in business strategy and the customer-facing sides of organizations. So we tend to spend a lot of time looking at issues around selling, how we reach our customers most effectively and efficiently. So selling, marketing, and customer experience. And our client base is primarily global, I'd say 750 corporations, highly concentrated in technology, industrial products, and professional services.
I love it. And then for just kind of a brief synopsis of the book that you wrote, Sales Manager Survival Guide, why did you want to write that book?
Yeah, that's the first of several books I'm writing, but that was published about a year and a half ago. And I really focused on the role of the frontline sales manager as we do our consulting, and as I look at people that reach out to me through LinkedIn and other venues, is I realized that sales managers, frontline sales managers, are really struggling. They don't have any great resource to learn about how to do their job as best possible. Oftentimes their managers aren't coaching them very well. Oftentimes they've been put in the role because they've been a hot salesperson, but they really don't understand their job and how to be great at that job. So it really is almost a pragmatic desk guide to help sales managers, help their teams achieve the highest levels of performance.
I love it. So Dave, for the rest of our conversation today, we are going to be talking about prospecting. You were telling me on our call a couple weeks ago about the prospecting process that you use in your own business, that your team uses in your business, and I loved it. I too often, you just get this spray and pray, these very generic messages. I feel like the last couple of weeks I've been talking about it a lot, but your approach to prospecting kind of flies directly in the face of that approach. And so it was very refreshing for me to hear you talk about it. Can we start by just talking again at a high level, Dave? How do you think about prospecting, and then how has that shaped what you and your team are actually doing?
Well, prospecting is a critical part of everybody's business and every salesperson's business, regardless of how experienced you are, how big a reputation you have, and all that kind of thing. I mean, everybody in our company has been at least a VP of sales in fairly large companies. So we have, fairly big reputations and fairly strong networks. However, in spite of that, to really build the business at the volume we expect it to be, is prospecting has to become a part of our daily and weekly activity. And so often, like with so many salespeople, we find excuses not to do that. I mean, most of us don't like prospecting. And, in our role, I mean, we have, we both, as consultants, we deliver services. So I spend most of my time in work sessions and meetings with our clients, helping them, identify the issues that they're trying to attack, identify strategies for doing that, and so on. So we're spending time doing delivery work. And a lot of our time is spent doing sales work in terms of developing opportunities and moving them through the pipeline. But that all starts with prospecting. And so we have to, just as every other salesperson has to do, we have to be rigorous about our prospecting. So we do a couple of different things. In fact, the one key metric I measure myself and our team of 15 people on every week is every Friday I get a prospecting report. And they send me one number. We've clearly defined our prospecting metric, and that is a highly impactful conversation with somebody in our target personas, and it's somebody that we've never spoken to before, or at least have not spoken to for a number of years. So there's some real rigor on what counts as a high quality prospecting conversation, and we don't play games with that. It really is
what that high quality conversation is.
It really is we're trying to engage people with certain kinds of conversations around business issues impacting them that we can help them with. Okay. So it's not random calls. It's not how are you calls. It's not catching up calls. They're very focused calls on customers who we believe have issues that we can address. And it's either they may have reached out to us in some way, or frankly, we have, I call it kind of a stalker mentality. Each one of us has 2 to 3 segments that we are developing both our personal knowledge of and our reputations, our visibility. So, for instance, I tend to be one of the guys in our company that focuses on software, whether it's SaaS, enterprise, or things like that. I tend to focus also on semiconductor and electronic components and on telecommunications. So I spend a lot of time at conferences and studying and looking at the issues there. And so my prospecting is I tend to reach out to folks in those organizations. I see something happening with a company that in say the semiconductor segment, and reach out in kind of a cold way and say, there's some issues that we believe are impacting your performance that you might be able to improve. So those prospecting calls come from those kinds of things. So each one of the people on the team has a few industries that they stock, that they're very knowledgeable in, that they have some level of reputation, so they can point to people of, we work with these people and those people and so on, partly to establish our credibility, but that we can have more than a surface conversation. We can drill down, 2 or 3 levels deep in our first call. So having that rigor, having that ability to have a highly impactful conversation and being very focused on calling the right people and having the right discipline, regardless of where we are in the world. I may at any one time be in Europe, Africa, Asia, or North America or South America, but I still have to get, my personal number is I have to have 6 net new conversations every week.
How much outreach do you typically have to do, Dave, to be able to have 6 quality conversations?
Well, we're very focused at it. So, our process generally is some initial emails, maybe some initial phone calls with an executive assistant or something. But, for instance, 100% of my calls are scheduled. So I've had enough outreach with, say, an executive assistant, or enough outreach through email or something like that my calls, I'm lying, maybe 90% are scheduled. And so I have a set time where an executive is expecting a call from me. We have, a good conversation. It's not looking at, what problems are you having and do you want to buy our services? It's looking at having a good substantive conversation. These guys may not have an immediate need, but I want to start establishing that relationship. I know if I don't make my 6 calls this week, that I won't make my number in the first quarter of 2019. And so if I don't make those 6 calls, while my business looks really good for 2018 and so on, in 2019, it starts looking a little bit sketchy. So I have to have that prospecting discipline.
I love it. I love it. And what are some of the, I guess, when you're consulting other companies around kind of the art of prospecting, what are some of the mistakes that you see them making most often, and how do you advise them in that?
That's a good question. And I think one of the biggest mistakes I see them making is going wider rather than narrower.
Okay.
It seems that people are so focused on volume and velocity that they cast a wider and wider and wider net, to reach prospects. It's interesting. I talked to a client, was doing some interviews of salespeople with a client actually last week, and they have an outstanding system that's producing really great results. They viciously narrow where they prospect on. They know what their sweet spot is, and they focus very intensely on that sweet spot. When they're tempted to cast a wider net, they do exactly the opposite. They narrow it down and narrow their focus because they know that there are enough customers in that sweet spot for them to achieve their business plan. Their challenge is just to reach those people. So they double down on trying to say, what's that sweet spot and how do we kind of narrow the focus? The second thing I see people do is they don't pay attention to triggers, triggers that happen in the environment, whether it may be, in our case, it's an organizational change, or it may be a bad quarterly report, or it may be something disruptive happening in the industry that we know ripples through and will impact our customers, or something disruptive happening with one of their competitors that will impact them. So, I don't see salespeople. I see salespeople just randomly saying, do you want to talk to me, rather than saying, we noticed something happened in the industry with your company, with your customers, or something that's likely to impact you. How are you dealing with that?
Are there any particular triggers, Dave, going back to that people should stay away from? I know that a lot of people, hey, you saw that you just raised a round of funding. Now I want to sell you my thing. Maybe that is a good trigger, but are there certain triggers that you see that, I don't know, almost make you think, I think you can get a little more creative with it?
No, I think you have to be sensitive to how you approach somebody. I mean, so for instance, we approach a lot of people who are producing bad results. And clearly I don't want to call a CEO or an EVP of sales up and say, geez, your last quarter sucked.
Yeah.
What are you doing about it? It's so, there's sensitivity to how you deal with the trigger and how you deal with the news. But, I think you ought to, and that really comes from, I think, our depth of understanding of what's happening in the particular market segment. Does that make sense?
It totally does. In hearing you talk about this a couple of weeks ago, Dave, and then hearing you lay out these 2 specific mistakes that you see, not narrowing your focus enough, not paying attention to triggers. This has been incredibly helpful. Is there anything else around prospecting, Dave, that you think our listeners should understand before we transition into the last part of this interview?
I think, it's just like kind of Nike says, you just do it. I'd say focus your prospecting effort, go narrower, wider rather than wider. Know what you're talking about. Look for those triggers. Jump on the phone or do it in person. Don't rely, solely on social media and those kinds of things. Those are great tools. But a lot of the old school stuff of, sometimes when I'm traveling, I'll call and make an appointment and show up on somebody's doorstep. Or I may not even make an appointment, but I'll show up on somebody's doorstep. And it's hard for them to turn me down if I'm showing up on their doorstep.
Makes sense.
But fundamentally, you got to do the work.
Yep. One of my goals this year is to meet with 100 potential customers in person. And so yesterday I started going through and kind of mapping out the different cities that I'm going to target and the trips that I'm going to be making there because I think that point of there's just something powerful that can happen when you're in front of someone in person, the trust that you can build and the rapport that you can build. So I'm totally on board with that idea. Dave, I want to close it down with one last question. I'd love to ask Dave, what would you say is the legacy that you want to leave?
Well, that's a really important question, I think, for all of us. If you look at my blog's entitled Making a Difference. And, one of the things that I've personally felt, and I think that I think everybody in our company feels, is we want to have an impact on the lives of the people we work with and on the companies and the organizations. And so we want to make sure that what we're doing is having an impact and making a difference. And, it kind of is a virtuous cycle. Is as long as we're having an impact on these people, we create customers and clients for life.
I love it, Dave. If somebody wants to check out your book or they want to learn more about Partners in Excellence, or stay connected with you, what's the best way for them to go about doing all those things?
I would love for them to order the book and reach out to me. It's on Amazon, salesmanagersurvivalguide.com. My blog, I tend to blog about 4.2 business days a week, is partnersinexcellenceblog.com. I'm on LinkedIn. Just look up Dave Brock. I'm Southern California, or Partners in Excellence. Or Twitter is David A. Brock.
Dave, thank you so much for your time today. This has been fantastic, so I really appreciate it.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much, James.
If you're a B2B marketer, we want to feature you on sites like Huffington Post, Social Media Examiner, and Chief Marketer. Every week, we send out a question related to B2B marketing. We use the responses to those questions to fuel the content we write for really popular websites. So head over to sweetfishmedia.com/questions and sign up today.
Thank you so much for listening. Until next time.